I'm currently working on this huge project. It's been a long project called counterculture Orientalism. And it was the kind of like Orientalism that was established from like all the way from the Beats to like the Beatles meeting Maharishi for transcendental meditation. And the one thing is when it gets imported into the United States, these religious and quote unquote spiritual practices, how do they manifest? What things are augmented?
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. A few weeks ago, I saw a patient for an encounter that she had had with poison ivy. Usually, that kind of thing has died back here in the Midwest at this time of year, but climate change is making our weather more pleasant. I did a treatment that knocked down the itching and redness. Nothing like pouring some cold Taiyang water on an inflammatory condition to take out some of the heat. The Saam 4 needles for tonifying the urinary bladder is a pretty reliable treatment for these kinds of externally generated heat conditions that cause their mischief at the surface of the body. I saw her again today. The damp, windy, hot toxin made a comeback 6 days after her treatment. I expected a pulse that was rapid and floating, but the pulse on the left felt more slippery, probably indicative of her constitutional dampness, but the right pulse, that was weirdly interesting. I couldn't really find it. It was kind of there, but kind of not. It wasn't the kind of not there of a weak pulse, but more that it was disordered at the edges. Like back in the days when television was broadcast through the air and there were times when you'd sort of have two stations at the same time. Maybe you've had this experience as well, that when you find something odd, you just hang with it. I mean, it's nice if it makes immediate sense, but often enough in clinic, I find that I run into something and all I know is, I wasn't expecting this, and I'm not sure just what it is. Stuff like this is a bit paradigm bending for me. My usual ways of making sense, they don't quite know how to parse this kind of thing. Later, as I was writing up my clinic notes, I began to wonder if that weird there but not there, that odd sense of the edges of the pulse being there and then kind of evaporating, maybe this was the effect of wind. That sometimes, and this might be one, the pulse doesn't have an edge, not because it's weak, but because it's being disrupted by wind. Chip Chase used to say, any diagnostic phenomena in the body should have a palpatory reference. I suspect I felt this kind of thing before with other patients, but wasn't tuned in enough, or maybe didn't have the experience to put it together, that perhaps this pulse is a sign of wind. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but cottoning on to it and adding to the palpatory database of experience, it means that next time I run into a pulse that feels like this, I can check to see if wind might be a part of that picture. You never know when you're going to find something that you weren't looking for. And beyond that, not even sure what it is, other than that it was there, it means something. The practice of acupuncture, it's an ongoing adventure. I know I've been saying a lot lately here on the podcast that acupuncture is strange. It's a weird medicine. First, that it works not by putting something into the body, but instead that it calls forth latent capacities and potentials. This is a way of thinking that goes uncomfortably counter to Western materialist thought. Acupuncture is one of the gifts of cultures coming together, and through that convergence, allowing for cultural exchange that can benefit more people. It's not always an easy process. Ethnocentrism, bigotry, and the innate suspicion about others who are very different from us, it creates barriers to understanding the gifts and perspectives another culture can share. In this conversation with Tyler Phan, we discuss his perspective on the power dynamics in American Chinese medicine as rooted in appropriation, where white practitioners gained authority and legitimacy through state systems, while Asian practitioners were marginalized. This is a view that I'd not previously considered, but it's part of a wider cultural conversation these days. And I appreciate Tyler for joining me here on the History Series to discuss this topic. We'll get into it right after this. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. You have clinic challenges? Our sponsors have solutions. One of the foundations of a smooth-running clinic is having a supplier that you can rely on. Blue Poppy is your trusted source for all your clinic supply needs. Listen in for their special Black Friday discount. Mayway focuses this month on digestive health. Visit them not just for herbs, but also for learning resources that help you to better use real Chinese medicine. It's hip to be square with the game-changing Fascia Buddy cupping system that your patients are going to love. Later in the show, you'll hear how Jane's suite of clinic management tools makes office management a breeze. And for those of you licensed in California who want to get on insurance rolls with the best reimbursements and the least hassles, we have a special message from AccuCare, who has been helping acupuncturists do exactly that for over 30 years. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers that our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Running a busy clinic means staying stocked with the products you trust. And this November, Blue Poppy is making it easier than ever. From November 17th through the 30th, take 20% off your favorite Blue Poppy products during their Black Friday sale. That includes everything from their premium acupuncture needle brands, Tempo and Balance, to trusted herbal formulas like the Classics line, Great Nature Classics Cold Quell, Pediatrics Externals, and many more. It's the perfect time to stock up before the year ends, and with free shipping on all orders over $50 in the continental United States, there's even more to love. Don't miss this limited offer, 20% off Blue Poppy products, November 17th through the 30th.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. This month at Mayway, we're focused on digestive health, a core foundation of wellness in Chinese medicine. In our newsletter and on our Chinese Medicine Matters podcast, we'll explore formulas and treatment for constipation, IBS, and food stagnation, offering both classical TCM insights and practical clinical applications. Since 1969, Mayway Herbs has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. Our Plumflower brand line includes pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs. And with educational resources, articles, and videos, we're here to help you provide the very best patient care. Visit us at mayway.com to explore more. We wish you a wonderful holiday season, and deep thanks, as always, for your support. Here's to better health and balance with the wisdom of real Chinese medicine.
The square cupping revolution has begun. Hi again, John Stan here, developer of the multi-sized Fascia Buddy square cupping system. We've been demonstrating the square cup system at conferences across North America and Europe, meeting wide-eyed practitioners excited by what the square cups can do. Our short, on-the-spot treatments have produced quick fascial remodeling, resulting in increased range of motion, less pain, and better function. Circular cups will always have a place, but the new techniques made possible with Fascia Buddy square cups will expand what you can accomplish, helping you love cupping even more. Fascia Buddy products are now available in the US through Golden Needle, Blue Poppy, and Omni Therapy Supply, in Canada at Eastern Currents, in the EU at acupunctureworld.com, and in New Zealand at Kinetic Distributions. Visit fasciabuddy.com to see links to our distributors and get your set today.
Tyler Phan, welcome to Qiological.
Thank you for having me.
I am really delighted. I always say this, I'm delighted, but I am delighted. I can't believe I get to sit down with people all over our profession, all over the world, jibber-jab about something I find interesting, and I think you probably do too, or you wouldn't be here. East Asian medicine, acupuncture, herbs. It's tremendous, the life that we get to have, the practices we get to have and the ways that we get to help people, unbelievable.
Totally.
So really happy to have you. You're an acupuncturist. You're also a PhD. You've got a background in anthropology.
Yeah.
And you've done a dissertation on medicine, Chinese medicine in America.
Yeah. American Chinese medicine. Yep.
American Chinese medicine. I had someone recently talk about American Chinese medicine. I think one of the presidents in one of the schools was talking about how it's Chinese medicine as it's come here and landed and grown. It's grown its own kind of root. Maybe not its own root, its own branch to the root. American Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
But you've got some perspectives that I've not heard about before. And so I'm really excited to get into it with you and hear more. But I'm always curious how people came around to doing this work in the first place. What drew you into this field, Tyler?
Yeah, so basically I kind of didn't have a choice. It's familial. So like my mom said it's in my blood, so she introduced me to her uncle who got me into acupuncture and herbs to a lesser extent. So I basically started training when I was 15, and that's like exactly of July 25 years ago. So I've been at this for a while, and I'm seen like many different kind of manifestations of it, many different practices, and that kind of led me inevitably to my research, my PhD research at University College London. And since I've written American Chinese Medicine, which is the PhD dissertation, I've been teaching at Pitt, University of Pittsburgh for the past 7 years in the Department of Anthropology and the Asian Studies Center, as well as recently I've been teaching at Carlow University as well. So my trajectory, like I said, it wasn't really my choice, and then I kind of got into the punk rock scene when I was like really young. So
How young were you?
my first show was when I was 10.
Okay, that is early.
Yeah, so but my dad would always give me rides to punk shows, so like and like during that period punk was kind of dying out and the hardcore scene was kind of establishing. So like I grew up in what we call like the early like 90s hardcore scene in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is called Lake Effect Hardcore. So with the whole aspect of like punk rock, like the DIY ethics, I'm like, oh, okay, so I just learned this medicine like when I was 15, like I already been in the punk scene for a while. I was getting out of the punk scene, going into the hardcore scene, getting into more like political elements, which I was already like political when I was like 12. But like when I was 15, I got more into a whole milieu that like kind of accepted the authors that I was reading, the thinkers I was reading, and it became a huge like cultural impact with bands like Earth Crisis, even this band. I know this might be foreign to some of you listeners, but like bands like Hatebreed, their first album was like an anti-vivisection album. So like all these kind of like radical, quote unquote radical politics were just kind of my everyday language, like my pre-teens. So getting into that when I was 15, it was like a natural progression to find different means to treat myself, but also like help my family and friends. So, and it was just like,
Well, that's like an old Asian ethic anyway.
yeah, totally.
Learning medicine to care for yourself, take care of your family. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing going to acupuncture school. I went to this acupuncture school because I was really influenced by Nguyen Van Yi when I was really young because the teachers in Vietnam, particularly Nguyen Thai Tu, was really close with Nguyen Van Yi and it shared a lot of the common ideas. So I got onto this whole course of looking for like Nguyen Van Yi, like oriented kind of what we call epistemologies, and that's kind of how I landed to this school in like not even Boone, North Carolina, but like Sugar Grove, North Carolina, called Zhongdao. And then like it was even spelled like Wade Giles, like Jaung, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Old school.
yeah, so I remember I was the youngest in my class by 23 years.
How old were you when you went?
I was 19.
You were 19.
Yeah.
Dude, okay, so, all right, hang on a second.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. 10 years old, you go to your first punk rock show. 12 years old, you're getting into some politics stuff. That's,
Yeah.
how would you describe it again at that point?
Well, at that point, my first like show that really kind of revolutionized how I thought, how I saw the world was this show called the Primate Freedom Tour, and it was with this band called Oz Rotten, which is actually from Pittsburgh, where I'm at right now. They're all like, I know a lot of the members of the band now, but and like I just heard like Dave Trenga like sing, and I'm like, what? He's like literally memorizing like pages and pages of lyrics about like at the time it was the war in Bosnia and Serbia, you know what I mean? So it's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like that like gave me this political consciousness like at such a young age, and they were from Pittsburgh, which is super weird. So and then they were playing with one of the most influential the singer for one of the most influential bands for me, which was Crass, and the singer Steve Ignorant was in a band called Stratford Mercenaries. So that was like the first kind of show that like really got me into politics. And I'm like 12 years old. It's
Wow.
1997, and I'm like all giddy and like totally life-changing show for me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But that's also within the helm of like really like strong racial tensions, because in Pittsburgh there was a lot of like neo-Nazi skinheads, so we call them boneheads. So me and my friends, like we joined this group called ARA, which is Anti-Racist Action, and we fought racist skinheads. And a lot of my friends were skinheads, but they were anti-racist skinheads. So that's kind of like got me into this like heart.
Wait a minute. Wait. So you got racist skinheads and anti-racist skinheads.
Yeah, and actually, like the whole history of skinhead is like this skinhead counterculture is interesting because it was initially created by black Jamaicans in London and Jamaica. They call it the Spirit of '69 because that's when like Trojan Records released a whole bunch of like banger albums into that summer of 60 or in the year '69. So that created a whole like working class like subculture for Africans to like or Jamaicans and like different like milieu of Africans in London to dance in these dance halls, shave their heads, wear boots and braces like suspenders. And then fast forward to the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, you have literally cultural appropriation of these like white working class, disenfranchised, like pissed off youth blaming all their problems on immigrants and stealing that aesthetic and stealing that whole counterculture, but still embracing the working class ethics. So it's a really weird tension.
It's so weird how ideas travel, isn't it?
Totally, totally.
It's so bizarre.
And this is like what really fascinates me as an anthropologist is because like when you have something like even Chinese medicine, things get to be like distorted and things get to be not what it was intentionally created for. So like looking at just the whole idea of like the skinhead culture, they used to in the summer of 60 or the 69 with Trojan Records used to listen to like what we call rock steady or first wave ska, and then that transitioned into the late 70s early 80s with this whole genre called oi, and some people call it hate rock. So there was this huge like bifurcation even among skinheads like of this like genre of music and this counterculture, and that precipitated up to even now. But back in the 90s, especially in Pittsburgh, there was a lot of what we call hate rock, a lot of like racist kind of like.
And who was doing the hate rock? And who was being hated on? This is look. This is a little ways away from Chinese medicine, but
No, this is great.
but I think it kind of fits in some way.
Yeah, it totally does. And this will go into like how I can like conceptualize my world view. But mostly like the big and most influential band for like that kind of genre was like Screwdriver. And like so you had that current, and there were a whole bunch of bands that came from that and still exist to this day, but now clinging on to other subcultural like music genres such as black metal. So there's a whole genre of black metal called NSBM black metal, or NSBM, which is National Socialist Black Metal. I don't want to go too much into that.
Dude, you know what? I just have to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
Your life sounds like it's out of a Tom Robbins novel.
Yeah. Yeah, that was just, and I haven't even hit 20 yet. You know what I mean? So like I haven't even hit like 15 actually. So like, I was just hanging out with these crews like.
Were you going to school? What else were you doing?
So that's the thing. This is one of the like benefits of like in a weird way having like Vietnamese refugees as like your parents who like my dad. So this is a interesting connection in the whole like narrative.
Wait a minute. Your dad's a Vietnamese refugee who's into punk rock.
My mom and dad. Yeah, my mom and dad. Yeah, so well my dad
You're wrecking my stereotypes here.
Well, my dad wasn't in punk rock, but he would always bring me to shows. So like he worked at
Wait a minute, how did that work? He's not into punk rock, but he takes you to shows?
So I would be.
Yes.
Yeah. So my dad's super cool. Like if you ever like he's like still like one of the coolest people I've ever met. He's very unconventionally like Vietnamese. Like a lot of and mind you, my dad fought in the war for 13 years. And he literally fought against his dad because his dad was a Viet Cong. And then so you have that tension, but also he was in the ARVN for 13 years. He was a major in the army, but he's like super open-minded, like he would take me to all these shows and he's like, "You smell like a smokestack," because like the cigarette smoke, Back then they allowed like smoking in venues and stuff.
Of course, everybody smokes cigarettes. You're probably smoking dope too.
Yes. So like, and then it was funny because like the Mayu that I started to join with by the time I was 15 was like the hardcore scene. So like I was like straight edge, so no drugs, no alcohol. So really embraced that kind of kind of lifestyle. And then like my dad, it was hilarious. He would like drop me off of hardcore shows, and he's like, "Tyler," he's like, "why can't there be softcore? Because all I hear is hardcore, hardcore." So like, and like he's seen so many bands I would always like he would always ask like, "what is this band called?" and fill in the blank, and and it's super unique because I thought he just dropped me off, but later on I found out that he like stayed at almost all the shows.
Wow.
So that lasted all the way into like basically 2000 and like early 2000s with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the political climate really changed. But so to make a long story short, like I'm also like I ran away from home when I was like 16, or 15 going on 16, and I never came back, but I always loved my dad, so that was my only connection to like that world. And I would always go to Vietnam to learn like about acupuncture and herbs. It was a very different, weird situation, and like reconciling that at 40 right now, practicing like acupuncture literally for 25 years, it's like weird, it's odd, and like trying to understand that and conceptualize it through like a philosophical, political, cultural lens, and seeing how like things get distorted is like really fascinates me. Like I'm currently working on this huge project. It's been a long project called Counterculture Orientalism. And it was the kind of like Orientalism that was established from like all the way from the Beats to like the Beatles meeting Maharishi for transcendental meditation. And the one thing is when it gets imported into the United States, these religious and quote unquote spiritual practices, how do they manifest? What things are augmented? Like even like for example, like Tibetan Buddhism, I did my master's on Tibetan medicine at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies in University of London. And the first thing you realize is that like if you go to like a Tibetan Buddhist center in America, there's not a lot of chanting. I mean, there's some here and there, but it's nowhere close to like the chanting that like wake up 5 in the morning, You hear the different monasteries just chanting different like just preliminary chants, and then like they debate and like go do some more like studies. And what I found out is that like when it came to Tibetan Buddhism, there's very little meditation, and I mean very little meditation, and a lot of like mantra recitations, a lot of scriptural recitations, and that's how most like and Tibetans practice in that particular way too. It's a more venerative kind of practice than like this philosophical discourse.
Yeah, it sounds devotional.
Yeah, and that's why I've found like anthropologically speaking, a lot of like Tibetan traditions are going more towards like Asia because there's less of an emphasis on philosophical discourse, but more of an emphasis on devotional aspects of things. I mean, I remember Chögyam Trungpa, he warned about spiritual materialism, but like that's a huge thing. That's a really big thing in Asia.
Big thing here too.
Yeah, it's a big thing here. I would say like
Right? Get yourself a spiritual bypass. I'm gonna be able to get by the troubles in life because I'm living it right and doing it right.
yeah, and you can get by being an asshole as long as you're just meditating and like praying every day. You know what I mean? Like those are the kind of things I see ethnographically. You know what I mean? It's just like,
We see this in other religions too, right?
yeah, yeah,
I'm going to go to church on Sunday, and then on Monday, I'm going to be back to my bad ways.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, I totally. So
So you went to school at 19. You also had some study with uncles and some time in Vietnam as well. There's like family lineage that informs you.
yeah, my mom's uncle, my grand uncle, he taught me a little bit. He's like, the what I'm gonna teach you, you'll never really use in like the clinic, which is hilarious because it's all like primarily what I use today. And he's like, your mom said that she has connections to these hospitals in Vietnam, the pagoda hospitals, and that like you'll learn more there. And it's funny because a lot of the pagoda hospitals are just like literally like just protocols. So I'm like, whoa. Like now looking back, I'm like, it's so unique that like he didn't really care. He was more into herbs, and I like for me, a lot of the herbs that exist there aren't really common here because it's very tropical. So it's like I didn't really like take him seriously because like looking back, I'm like, okay, like he would just be like, it's super informal. Like he'd be like drinking.
Yeah. And you're how old at this time?
That time I was like 15, and then like 16, 17.
Yeah. It's hard at that age to,
And then yeah. And like I just want to have
I mean, lucky at that age to get it, but hard to like take it in.
yeah, and it was like but a lot of it's like really like common sense. And it's similar to like the Richard Tahn kind of stuff, like the balance method.
So, for example, yeah.
So it's even more chaotic than that though. He's like, "Oh, you have pain in your elbow? Well, what looks like an elbow?" And you'll be like, "Knee?" And he's like, "Yeah." So you just needle the knee. Like so it's like literally that informal. And like he's like there's millions of points. Can't really go wrong, you know what I mean?
If you know where they are and how to find them at the right time.
Yeah, but then yeah, exactly. But when I went into like the clinics at the pagoda hospitals, it was very different. It was like there are strict protocols, like almost every single bed like had an electro acupuncture e-stim, and it was like mandatory. But it was very interesting because it was like one thing I learned is that like in Vietnam, acupuncture is for the poor and working class.
Oh, that's interesting.
And like a lot of the set
Well, that fits right in with your punk roots, man.
yeah, totally, totally. So this is why for me it was like, yeah, I get to help the poor people. They needed help too. So like I was just an extra hand, and like it really was like interesting because it's like they segregate like men and women, and then so but with that like you just treat a whole bunch of people on like there's an open room with like 20 beds, and you just go at it. And sometimes you have an assistant. I was assistant for a little bit. You have to put like iodine on the body before you put the needles in. But then they're like the question about the needles gets a little bit like in hindsight you're like, oh, is these clean? Yeah.
Oh my good. Yeah, no, I saw some stuff in Beijing. Was like, if I wanted to get treated somewhere, I always brought my own needles because I saw what was going on. It was frightening.
Yeah, I mean things have changed now, but like especially like at the pagoda clinics, pagoda hospitals, it was a lot. They were underfunded. Like literally, it's just helping the poor.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's kind of how I resonated with the community acupuncture model because it looked so similar. But besides beds, it was like recliners and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah,
But the same idea, same ethic, same ethic.
yeah, and that's why I was like, this looks almost like identical to like what you see in Vietnam, but without like it. There's no cushions. It's like hot as hell. It's like 100 degrees. You're sweating on your patients, and
Yes, it's very humid,
yeah, you always have to wear like a white coat too.
tropical, not subtropical. Of course, you're the doctor. Otherwise, how do they know who you are? So you went to Zhongdao with the old Wade Giles spelling,
Yeah.
and so what drew you there? Were you living in the area? Was it something about the school? Was it?
No, literally, the teachings of Nguyen Bang Yi were like the like reason.
Oh, okay, because of the Vietnamese background. Okay.
Yeah, and I was really interested in his teachings like a little bit after I learned in Vietnam because they would talk about him a lot in Vietnam.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, a practice management software and EMR that's here to make clinical life a little easier. Running a health and wellness practice means managing a lot of moving parts. That's why I love how Jane helps to bring a bit of calm to the busy day by allowing me to set a schedule that works for my business. I can customize treatment types and times, locations, and staff availability to keep everybody organized and my clinic running smoothly. Need to send intake forms or appointment reminders? Jane can automate those too, helping patients to show up prepared and on time. And when it's time to pay, it's all taken care of. No extra card swipes or billing cleanup later. I especially like that with the welcome email my patients receive, they can fill out the intake, consent, and disclosure forms. It's easy for the patient, and it all goes right into their digital file. If you're looking for software that cares as much about the business side of your clinic as you care about your patients, head to jane.app/demo to learn more. And if you're ready to dive in, use the code Geological for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. And what would you say his take on medicine was compared to the common yard dog TCM, which is generally what schools teach because that's what the exam is. And if you want to get a license, you got to pass the exam. And so schools teach the exam and on you go. How was what he was teaching different?
So he had this whole model of, and we learned it actually in Zhongdao. It's called like Sanjiao energetics. So like it's basically based off of the three metabolisms or the three jiaos of the body, right? And like how they're interconnected, upper, middle, and lower. And that's why like it was very difficult. I think a lot of students had problems with this was reconciling how to like notate that kind of differential diagnosis like when a lot of differential diagnosis that was common in the student clinic was like bianzhong lunqi.
You can't.
Yeah, and it's
You can't. It's like speaking Cantonese to a Mandarin speaker.
exactly. So that created so much headaches for a lot of students, and I'm like, well, they should have just read like Wing Beng Yi's like Medicinal de Traditional. It's like it's literally translates to like TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, but in French, because he has all the patterns and stuff there. But we weren't taught that. Instead, it was like a weird kind of like hodgepodge of like Sanjiao energetics with the little chi, but also like trying to like put it in this pattern so that you can tell like there's some kind of consistency, but also like mixed up with J.R. Worsley's like kind of five element stuff.
Oh, wow. That would be a little confusing, wouldn't it?
So yeah, it was super confusing. And for the untrained, like, I mean, most of us had no background at all, and I had to like not tell my classmates because like my classmates were very competitive and I was the youngest by 23 years. So it was like I already had like at that point.
Yeah, but you're a punk, so it's okay. You can.
Yeah, I was punked. They just saw me like as like their child in a lot of ways, which was cool. I really like I have so many fond memories of my classmates.
Yeah. Hey, little brother.
Yeah, yeah. But like they were literally old and I'm still not at the age of the second youngest student in that class.
Yeah.
So, but it was great though. I think I really needed that and I really needed that kind of environment because like my dad, he worked like overtime at General Electric because of like neoliberal policies of NAFTA and the GATT and like the WTO of like outsourcing and sending them to like South America or like Mexico and like it was this constant fear that was that was always looming in my like house, right? So my dad literally had to pick up like multiple shifts so that we can like survive in Erie, Pennsylvania, and he was a union steward too at General Electric. My mom, she was a nail technician, still is. So it's very stereotypical Vietnamese kind of occupation. But like I can tell that as in hindsight, my mom still has a lot of like PTSD from the war. And I think some people are like meant to be parents and some people aren't. Especially as a parent now, I don't think it's for everyone, you know. So it was really hard to like, especially for Vietnamese of that generation, not getting like the help they need to like deal with that kind of like traumas. Like really, really, really hard. Yeah,
Well, and not not to mention being a stranger in a strange land,
totally, totally.
trying to raise a child when the culture that you come from has all these strong family ties, and here you are, stranger in a strange land. What do you do?
Exactly. And like it was really difficult. So I don't, in a lot of ways, like it was really hard for my mom to navigate that. And I think she didn't really have the support networks that like are available today. I think she does right today, but back in the 90s, it was really like hard.
It was hard, and you got your kid at 10 going to punk rock shows.
Yeah, I mean, and my
What am I going to tell my mother?
yeah, and I had yeah, exactly. I remember so this is just a funny like side story. I remember my mom like telling me, she's like, "Hey Ty, I heard this thing called MTV. It's really bad for kids, so don't you watch it." And I'm literally watching MTV, you know? I'm like,
Of course. Thanks, Mom.
"Yeah, mom, I will never watch." Yeah, I'm like, "I will never watch that," you know? But like it's this interesting tension because like they left literally 2 days before the fall of Saigon, and my dad was a helicopter pilot, so he picked up my mom literally in the middle of the well now it's a soccer stadium, but in the middle of a racetrack, a horse racetrack, and then they thought that they're gonna come back, but like they lost everything. That has like generational trauma embedded to it, and I think in a lot of ways, a lot of the Vietnamese community haven't reconciled with that, haven't come to terms with that, and just recently are starting to have that kind of like reckoning of like community support and like people like specialists helping people out with their mental health. But my parents didn't have that. So working class Vietnamese family, like it's in an all white dominated, all white like community is super
In Erie, Pennsylvania.
in Erie, Pennsylvania.
And it's not hot up here. It gets cold.
No, it's hella yeah, not only cold, like the most snow than like most cities in the US, you know.
Snow. What the hell is a Vietnamese person doing looking at snow? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, like yeah, so it's like very, very, very difficult. And like seeing my mom and dad at wedding they having to go through, it's really intense, you know, but they're I mean, they're retired now. I guess my mom's never gonna retire, but like
Yeah. Mine's 91. She's still working part time. She's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So
She loves it.
yeah, she loves it, and that gives her purpose, and it gives her meaning. But my dad, he's like super like chill and carefree, and like he's a union steward too, so like he has more lefty politics, even though he fought against communists.
Yeah. Your dad sounds super cool. I'd love to meet him. I bet we'd like each other. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's still like an inspirational human being because like he shows that you can like out of like literally 13 years of war come out with it with like complete joy.
That's pretty incredible. A lot of people do spiritual practices trying to get a small taste of that. Somehow your dad's got it. So that's amazing. All right. Well, so you go to Zhongdao. First of all, you come from this amazing background. I don't know what it is. I talked to someone recently who was going to techno shows at like the age of, I think, 11 or 12 in New York. So I don't know what it is about you and your generation. You guys are pretty wild. I thought I was kind of wild growing up in the 60s and 70s, but I ain't got nothing on you. But coming back to that, because I want to come to talk a bit about your dissertation, which is, and I'm still not all the way through it. There's a lot in there. Thank you. You've become an anthropologist. You've looked at some of these societal issues. You've looked at racial issues, power issues, medicine, how that all plays into it. I so appreciate hearing about your background in music, right? These black skinheads in 1969. Now, in 1969 in the United States, we had the Jefferson Airplane, we had the Rolling Stones, we had the Grateful Dead, we had like peace. It was almost a summer of love. It was the summer of love. It was the summer of love and the summer of assassination, right?
Sure. But you also had like the undercurrent of like the MC5s, you had like the Stooges, like that was like creeping. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't, because I was listening to Grace Slick. I was listening to, what else was I listening to? Of course, the Rolling Stones, Motown.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Motown was like awesome for a boy from Missouri. I was listening to that kind of stuff. But anyway, just like really different ethics in some way, those two times in those two places. And one of the things that was happening around that time here in the United States, for a multitude of reasons, is Chinese medicine began to migrate from the immigrant populations that it had been in into a more mainstream culture. And there were a couple of, let's face it, the people that first cottoned to this stuff in the United States, the first Caucasians that started to get interested, these were not mainstream characters. These were weirdos. These were kind of strange people. They were fringe. Some of them were students. Some of them were just like on their own journey of health and wellness, or just like up the man. I'm not going to the conventional way of doing things. And they found their way into Tai Chi. They found their way into acupuncture, meditation, a number of different things. And then that evolved into something that allows me to have a license and go to work every day.
Yeah. So
you've got another take on it. I looked at it as, wow, this thing came into our culture. Lucky us. It's amazing. And we have a chance to imbibe it. And then there were the characters that, went over to Asia for whatever weird reason and somehow picked up on it there and then came back. They weren't even in the States when it started to happen. They were following their own path and bumped into it. So there's a multitude of streams. Anyway, you've got a take on it that's a little bit different. And I want to know more about it because it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting tensions and the interesting like contradictions is that especially the counterculture of that generation, they were interestingly rebelling against one structure and system. What is it? Timothy Leary writes like tune in, turn off, drop out.
Yes, yeah, tune in. What was it? Yeah, I remember.
But yeah, tune in, turn off, drop out, right? Or so,
tune in, turn on, drop out.
Yeah, turn on, drop out. Which interestingly enough, at the similar time period, a little bit before, during the Cultural Revolution, in the PRC, you had like the rebellion against the Four Olds, right? So like, interestingly enough, however, the counterculture started to embrace what they thought like were these old traditions and old cultures and old language, but not in like the quote unquote West, which is what we call in academia the global North, but in like the East, the global South. You know what I mean? And it's this really interesting dialectical turn that happens. And they start and it was like interesting recipe too, because during that time period, England had like trade or not England had like alternative tourist routes from like London all the way into like Thailand essentially. And what's fascinating was that trade route was there from 1959 to basically the ousting of the Shah, so 78, 79, right? So like basically 20 years of this kind of alternative route of like exploration by by mostly white middle class Europeans and then Americans too. And that kind of like shot off this whole kind of other cultural revolution. But like I said again, it's this like dialectical opposition to the PRC where these like countercultures starting to get into more like interestingly enough hierarchical systems of religion of like spirituality that are very like strict, you know what I mean?
It is funny because what were we rebelling against? We were rebelling against the man. We were rebelling against society. We were rebelling against the hierarchy. We were rebelling against the government. We were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was
And then we went and embraced a different one.
exactly.
Oops.
Exactly. And it's that kind of interesting transgression I find super unique. And I'm like, what allures this group of people? And the big thing that I'm researching is that the common trope is that they're in search of enlightenment. But what we find out is heterogeneous manifestations of enlightenment by the different traditions, but more specifically by the specific practices. And that's what's really unique with this kind of like Orientalism that I've been researching is that it's very practice based. When you have like Maharishi and transcendental meditation, when you have like the whole UCLA cohort crew and like acupuncture, there's always this kind of fulcrum of practice that like is the impetus for them to like start to find a teacher because you have to find a teacher, and that's what's different from like Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society where she just channeled her cabinet of like quote unquote Mahatmas from Tibet, which are totally fictionalized, to like this actual practice of finding these teachers, finding what practice that they're practicing, and then importing it to America. And to me, that's like such a unique thing because like in the process of importation, there has to be a bureaucratic process. Bureaucratization is like a formality that's inescapable, whether if it's immigration, whether if it's creating a nonprofit for these centers. There's all these mechanisms that are in place of this kind of very informal practices that they've discovered in the East or discovered in the quote unquote East. And then when it imports in, there has to be automatically these like bureaucratization processes. And when you're trying to formalize these processes, then you have this other whole layer of like power structures, of like mechanisms, of regulations that have to be in place. So, and what we find out, and I've seen you like interview a lot of these pioneers, is that they were adjacent to people in power so they can pass these regulations, so they can have advocacy. So it already gets them into this idea like governmentality, but what Foucault talked about like biopower, which in his ideas is just disciplinary, what he identifies as like disciplinary power. So basically where power was used as like sovereign power is used for either disciplining or punishing, right? But more importantly, to have productive bodies to ensure that these mechanisms are in place, right?
Okay, hang tight for 1 second. There's a lot here.
Yeah, yeah,
I want to make sure that I'm following.
yeah.
So give me just a second to catch up because this is juicy.
Sure.
Let's just take for a moment people that went abroad. Joseph Goldstein here in the United States, who went and learned meditation, right? Came back and founder of a whole meditation thing, or people importing transcendental meditation, right? The Beatles and Maharishi, or the Bhagwan who lived in Oregon.
Osho. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Osha, 57 Rolls Royces. Like, okay, I
Yeah, yeah.
maybe we can come back and talk about that in a moment. I never understood what that fuckery was about. I know that's a really judgmental thing to say, but I cannot wrap my mind around what that kind of a circus would have been. I just didn't make any sense to me. But that's a different issue. What I'm curious about is, like, sometimes people go with the best of intentions. They're out on a little walkabout. They're on a journey. They're young. They don't know what life is about yet. You've done similar things in your own life. You go and you find something. People go abroad. They find something in the meditation. Maybe it settles their mind. Maybe it helps them resolve some trauma. Maybe it gives them a sense of peace that they didn't know that they had. They bring it back. They want to teach others. So is it an appropriation? Is it a sharing? Yes, there's always structures that grow up around anything, really. If you're gonna have a company, if you're gonna have a business, if you're gonna rent a place so you can sit with people and teach them, it all requires some money, maybe a bank account, maybe a license to occupy a house, something like that. So there's that aspect of, I'm going to just say, living in the world that has to be attended to. And often, I mean, you look at the world, it's full of hierarchies. I don't know how to escape them, actually.
Yeah, so the big thing I think that we are starting to get more aware of is like the consequences of your actions and taking responsibility for those who are marginalizing in the process. So I'm rereading like Dharma bumps and stuff like that, and I'm seeing like all the kind of landmarkers and on the road where these beats go to. And ironically enough, some of them are like literally a few miles away from like Japanese internment camps that literally like DT Suzuki was lucky. He was a scholar, but like hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans didn't have that privilege of, right? And like in some contexts, it is appropriating their ideas because they're completely distorting it to fit their kind of narrative, right? And I think that's what I'm more concerned about. Like, yes, they're trying to find exploration, self-exploration. They're trying to find like different modes of like healing and practice. But the thing is that like I think it's a little bit with like done with a little naivete of looking at like the cultural context and the traditions that exist in America that have been existing for America for like a century, right? At that point. And I think that's like one of the things I find.
So what traditions have been existing in America for a century?
So yeah, so there's this book called American Dharma that traces like the different like Japanese traditions that a lot of the migrants came over and brought with them to the United States. In Vietnam, like it's fascinating the cherry picking aspect of what traditions align to specific predominantly white Mayu. Like for example, most people will focus on like Thich Nhat Hanh, but because he has like all these white intermediaries, he has like the process of speaking English, right? But there's like if you go to Vietnam, like most Vietnamese aren't Tiang Buddhists, Zen Buddhists, right? Most Vietnamese are a hybrid of like Pure Land and like veneration of Guan Yin. You know what I mean? So it's like extracting aspects of a culture, but like having a semblance of, I'm not saying that they're proclaiming this is Vietnamese Buddhism, but I'm saying that it gives the impression that Vietnamese Buddhists are like the same or similar. And that's where I think it's a really like interesting process because there's even two Vietnamese Buddhist not monasteries but like centers here, and there's no white people that go to them. I've never met like any white people who ever went to these, but it's explicitly becomes like this identity for the Vietnamese diaspora. And this is like a unique thing that like they don't have these intermediaries to like translate the different like dharma talks or anything like that, because in a way that solidifies the community and it becomes their like identity. And I find it a very unique thing. So it's like when the counterculture is exploring all these like different processes and different practices, I think a lot is like taken out. And the big component of what I find as a religious studies scholar too is that religion is community.
Back to the devotional chanting that we were talking about earlier of the Tibetan Buddhist community.
And yeah, yeah. And like I think that's one of the and going into like acupuncture for us like Vietnamese acupuncturists, it binds communities. It becomes our identity. I'm a Bác sĩ Chăm Cứu. So like I'm perceived as like an acupuncture doctor. Vietnamese see me as like a way for me to treat them and like helping out my community. And it gets hard. It gets really hard when these things start to have regulations and start to go through this whole process. Because I know when I was doing my ethnographic research, I've met plenty of Asian American and Asian practitioners that were practicing undercover because they don't have any college education to even get into acupuncture school.
They've got some kind of family lineage or some kind of tradition,
Totally.
a piece of the medicine. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. And look, to be clear, I'm not a historian. I'm not an academic. I've got a master's degree in acupuncture. That's it. All right. I've spent some time in Asia studying language so I could study medicine, but I haven't gone any sort of academic route in this. I've always approached it as a practitioner. So just so you know where my bias is coming from.
Sure.
One of the things I find really curious about what happened in China with TCM, I mean, God, China in the 50s, what a mess. Horrible. Like decades of war, strife, colonization, dealing with the nationalists, getting rid of them. Oh, now we got a country. It's in tatters. And what do we do with it? And they make TCM as a way to hopefully train people up quickly so that they can have some kind of national healthcare service. And of course, it doesn't take a big read of Chinese titles of medicine books over the years to realize there are traditions that go back long periods of time. There are many different ways of working. There's family traditions, regional ways of working. Yeah, they put TCM together as a response to a bad situation. And they've got their own political views that also get inculcated into it, because how can it not? That's just the way humans are. And that's the way power works. And so a bunch of stuff gets left out of TCM, but a bunch of stuff gets put in.
Yes.
But a bunch of stuff gets left out. And at least in my experience, it's only been recent, I mean, like in the past 25-ish years. I was there in the early part of the century. And it's like people were just beginning to come out. Like I was meeting Dr. Huang, right? He's got this whole different way of looking at Jingfang and classic formulas than the way that Shifang was being, taught through TCM. And different schools of acupuncture thought. I met Dr. Wang Jui, who was just beginning to be able to teach his channel palpation at that point. Prior to that, it was a little like you had to be careful with it. So there were all these other traditions in China that have been there, but kind of like kept under wraps because you can't really say much about it.
Yeah.
Until things opened up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we have Westerners wander in and find these books written, and it's amazing because they've never seen anything like it. And acupuncture, if you've had the experience of it, it can change your life. So they bring back a piece, but it's just a piece. And so what's the point I'm trying to make? The point I'm trying to make is even in China, they didn't have room for family traditions. They didn't have room for small regional differences. They didn't have room for something that might have gone against the Marxism that they were promoting.
I think what's unique of what you said is you're kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, illuminating the heterogeneity of Chinese medicine.
Define heterogeneity. I'm not an academic.
Differences. The differences. So it's the opposite. Yeah, the opposite of the homogeneity of it all, right?
The differences. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So, and this is one thing I've always argued, and this is why it's so complicated to standardize traditions and like practices.
I don't think you can.
Yeah, and so we'll get into this. This is very unique that you're bringing this up. But like, and this is what I'm trying to argue is how can you standardize all these practices, right? And I think you cannot
I'm with you.
in the context of like these traditions. And I've talked to a lot of scholars dealing with like regulations of like alternative medicine, complementary alternative medicine, integrative medicine, whatever you want to call it. And as an anthropologist, I want to see like the mechanisms of power, right? Like if you're going to standardize something, what are you going to standardize? And I'm looking at all these state boards, right? What is the main purpose of all these state boards? It's just to protect the general public, right? Literally, it's not to like see what kind of differential diagnosis is more superior or more legit. It's literally to protect the general public. And if you go and start with that, with the basic premise that you're here to protect the general public, okay, simplifying what acupuncture is, just the simple action of acupuncture. What are you doing? You're putting hopefully a sterilized disposable needle into someone for therapeutic value, right? Like you can like get rid of all the jargon that's associated with it, but just strip it down to what is the action you're doing. And if that is what your concern is, how do you protect people and maintain safety with just that action alone? Now,
That's not so difficult.
exactly. And this is the thing. And this is what I'm arguing, and I've got so much shit for this, where I've even was in an interrogation room in an integrative medicine conference. But literally, that action alone, it's like you say, like sanitize your hands or wash your hands, use a one disposable needle, put it in, like insert the needle, not in an organ or near an organ, know the depths, take out the needle, put it in a sharps container, right? Like that is translatable. You can translate that to most languages, right? Like it's really simple, and to know how to do that on the most basic level, literally, and we learn from dry needlers, takes like 2 days, if that, right? That's literally all you want. You just want to protect the safety of the patient and like doing it in a way that's not going to harm them. Like literally, there's no jargon that you don't need to talk about pulses. You don't need to talk about tongue diagnosis. Just that simple action of placing a needle into someone for therapeutic value. And that's what I've been trying to argue. Now, people started to like load on to different epistemologies. I'm like, okay, that's crowding things. But like I learned, and through my ethnographic research of having the rare privilege of seeing Dr. Tan. I don't know if you ever met or communicate with Richard Tan before. He's passed away. He like passed away literally.
I remember taking a few classes with him.
Yeah. What does he do in 5 days? He teaches people not only how to diagnose and treat, but confidently diagnose and treat people in 5 days.
Well, and he teaches a method of acupuncture that relies on thinking about channels and some of the stuff that your uncle talked about. A knee and an elbow. Oh, wait, look at that. They're the same thing. A shoulder and a hip. Huh. A wrist and an ankle. Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, huh. Let's explore that a little more. And you know, so there's his tradition. There's the Dongsha tradition, right?
Yeah.
The stuff that you learned.
Yeah.
There's probably all kinds of other stuff out there, too, that we've never heard about, but similar stuff.
Exactly. And like, but at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're just literally,
Sticking a needle safely in someone.
and that can be translatable. You can like translate to any language. And this is what I think what the problem with the profession is that there's so much exotification. There's so much orientalism that's involved. Especially I went to school, I experienced this for like 4 years, you know. I'm like, why can't he just say like this? You know what I mean? Well, I'm not the teacher, so like, and If people want to learn different traditions, they can. It's not inhibiting that. And that's why I'm seeing, and what I've been arguing for like the past almost decade, and you might see as well, that there's all these schools that are closing, right?
Oh my God, it's imploding.
Yes, it's imploding. And
It's imploding.
we're at the point in the past 5 years, 25% of the schools have now closed. So that's pretty telling, right?
Something's happening.
And that something's happening, and you had your master's, I got my master's in acupuncture too, and I realized like, okay, that's 4 years, which by the way is one of the longest master degrees in the United States, right?
Yeah, you got to work your ass off for it.
Yeah, totally. And like the difference is, I don't know if you got to the part with the FPD, like the doctorate and all that stuff, and there's no actual research that shows that a doctorate has more competency levels than a master's, by the way.
Are you a California licensed acupuncturist who accepts insurance or wants to? Are you satisfied with your current reimbursements? You could be earning more. With the right support, joining top insurance networks such as Cigna is simple. AccuCare was started 30 years ago by acupuncturists for acupuncturists. AccuCare has already negotiated top reimbursement rates. With AccuCare, you'll spend more time with your patients and less time battling insurance paperwork. What do their members say? Here are a few words from Tara Diaz, LAC. Thanks to AccuCare, I am now successfully in network with several major insurance providers, which has significantly expanded my patient base and improved my practice's financial stability. Visit AccuCare.com and let them help you get in network with Cigna and other companies. Get paid what you deserve. Visit AccuCare.com and save $100 on your credentialing application fee. Use the code PROSPER. That code again, PROSPER. Visit AccuCare.com to get higher reimbursement rates and a credentialing company you can trust. You know, Tyler, by the time the doctorate came around, I'd already been practicing long enough that I have a stable, somewhat mature practice. And I've got the good fortune, I can read enough Chinese to learn things. I've got a podcast, so I talk to different people. There are so many different methods and ways of working that are available now. You could just go like cherry pick what you want to learn. I think I didn't care about having a doctorate because, I don't know, man, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. Like that stuff never, it didn't hold a sway for me. It did for my parents.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit like you, right? I'm a DIY kind of character. Like, if I can learn it and do it and have some competence at it and be helpful, okay, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
So, but that's just me.
No, and this is the thing that I've learned is that like there's no way of knowing about competency too, because I had like classmates that I were in school with, they were really good students but like sucked at treating. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter how many years, some people just got it, some people have it different ways, you know what I mean? So but my thing is that like I had to like really analyze this from like the most raw form of what the needle is, and that's the whole point, is that, no pun intended, is that all the regulations are literally revolved around the regulation of the needle.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is in part how we try to keep the dry needlers out. That's in part how we protect our profession. Look, all professions try to protect their scope of influence, whether you're a plumber or an electrician or an anesthesiologist or whatever, right? I mean, that's just, I think I just want to say that's kind of human nature. I've got my turf, and you step on it, I'm gonna give you some trouble. I'm gonna try to protect it. I think it's kind of a human thing, in a sense.
But see, I will also like push a little bit back in saying we also work together and like try to like de-escalate conflicts before they happen, try to find common ground, especially during times of crises. We try to find ways to work together and help each other out. And I've found that like as an anthropologist, like I really have to suspend my like acupuncturist profession kind of mentality and seeing like, okay, like, are these like chiropractors and physical therapists, like, are they hurting someone? Are they intentionally hurting someone? Like, I have to like put that critical analysis. And then I looked, okay, the main thing that a lot of acupuncturists were arguing against physical therapists and chiropractors, they were utilizing their SAEs and AEs, severe adverse events and adverse events recording that they actually do to be used against them, when I haven't seen any like protocols or SOP, standard operating procedures, for acupuncturists to record their standard their severe adverse events or adverse events recording.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. That's interesting
Yeah, yeah.
because I don't think I've ever been even exposed to that idea. It was certainly nothing I was exposed to in school, but hey, that was 20, almost 30 years ago. Are we supposed to report adverse events, and how do you know what an adverse event is, and who does it get reported to?
That's where it gets really tricky. I mean, so this, you just unlocked a major kind of like black box that like most of us in the profession should be aware of, because most medical like practice medical professions have to adhere to some kind of, if an adverse event happens, record it, right? I recorded an adverse event dealing with herbs, and like I even getting whim of me reporting it, I was like threatened. I won't say who or what, with like litigation. Just me, like the act of like recording it.
Okay, so I record stuff like that in my clinic notes because I want to know
Yeah, yeah,
if something adverse happens. It's useful information.
yeah.
I mean, it's diagnostic. Like, oh my God, it gave them, they vomited that stuff whenever they drank it. Oh, okay. Of course, I write it down.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to report that?
Well, if there's a commonality, especially as the specific kind of like, I mean, this is where it gets like complicated with like the ephedra stuff, right? It like led to like, I mean, people use high concentrations of mahuang or ephedra, right?
Yeah, but not acupuncturists.
Well, yeah,
That was the diet food industry claiming this is natural, it can't hurt you.
sure, yeah,
I remember being at acupuncture school and going to a music festival and somebody was selling that stuff. And I was just an acupuncture student. I looked at the amount of ma huang that they had in their product and I'm like, this is dangerous, don't you?
yeah.
It's like, no, it's not. It's natural. It's like, oh, this is not going to go well.
And when it comes to adverse events, like the only thing that I could find, especially relating to like acupuncture or like herbs, is like the FDA. You know what I mean? But this is what I'm trying to illuminate though is a problem. And this is like a problem if we're gonna have rhetoric about safety and trying to counter like other professions who are like going in our quote unquote turf. There has to be a sound like counter argument on that we have like systems in place for adverse or severe adverse event recordings, right? But that's the thing. And what I've discovered, especially in the field, is that like there's this kind of, I won't say silencing, but there's definitely a stress from certain insurance companies that have certain dialogues in which to not, because it's this really hard thing, because most of acupuncturists are small business owners or like micro businesses, right?
Yes, actually, we're not, most of us are not small businesses. We're actually micro businesses.
Yeah, we make too little money to be. Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So what the issue then becomes is that like this is a big deal. If we report it, we can face like litigation and stuff too. But at the same time, it becomes this like double-edged sword. We want to protect the general public, but we don't even have the mechanisms in place to like record these things. And this is what I'm saying, that I was hospitalized and like I had a few months ago, and I told them that I just had a headache from a medication, and they're like, "What medication is it?" And I told them, and they automatically recorded it and put it in a database. And like, "What are your symptoms, etc." And I saw them type in it away. Nothing that they're reprimanding, but they wanted to have like a database of like patients' interactions with like pharmaceuticals.
I'm a little surprised to hear that. I have so many patients who have sometimes serious reactions to their medications, and it seems like their conventional medicine practitioners don't think too much of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's that too. I don't mean to point fingers.
No, no.
I want to underscore what you're saying here, Tyler, that it's a tricky and difficult thing.
Totally.
What's adverse? What is okay? We're in a treatment process. They didn't respond well to that. That's useful therapeutic information. We'll do something different, right?
And this is where I'm coming with like, I'm not saying that there should be these strict, crazy regulations of like as severe adverse events recordings or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that, and especially I've seen this on multiple occasions, especially in the field, where acupuncturists talk about how safe the needle is, right? That like you can fit like 5 or 10 like acupuncture needles in a hypodermic needle.
That doesn't make it safe. That just makes it small.
Yeah, just makes it small.
Yeah, and that's just marketing so people aren't afraid.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
And then so I find like the interesting like opposite side of it is that hypodermic needles aren't as regulated. They're still a class 2 medical device, but you don't have to be a physician to use hypodermic needles. I know this because I work with Prevention Point, which is the harm reduction site in Pittsburgh. So like I get my sharps containers from them. But I actually looked at the FDA designation for a hypodermic needle, and I found that there's not little, but it's not as regulated as an acupuncture needle.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very specific that subsection of it being a class 2 medical devices where it says for an acupuncture needle, you has to be used by a licensed like practitioner. And that's literally the assemblage of the profession just on that subsection. So it begs the question for me, and I work with a lot of tattoo artists too, because that's another adjacent thing as well. Is that like how do you dispose of your needles and etc. and like what are your safety protocols and etc. You know?
Very similar to ours, I would suspect, because look, dealing with needle cleanliness, use, and disposal, it's not rocket surgery.
Yes.
Right? It's pretty simple.
So, and I asked them, how many years training do you need? They're like, years? You get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. An afternoon. Yeah. Well, look, we do our clean needle training. I think it takes, you do it a day or two in school, and then you go to a special thing maybe, and then you take a test, and, you're good to go. There's that. And then I get the safety piece, and I get that the safety, it's important, and in some ways it's not difficult. It's pretty simple. I think we can agree on that. What I want to come back to is looking at this idea that Chinese medicine, East Asian, I don't even know what we call it this week. I'm always afraid to say anything because it's like I'm going to be wrong again. I was okay a month ago, and now I'm going to be that boomer that hasn't wrong again. But whatever we're calling our medicine right now, again, there were people, and yes, they were Caucasian because they were part of the mainstream culture, even though they were rebelling against it, right? Because that's kind of what we were doing in our time. And look, there were problems in our time. The people that I've talked to, and maybe it's just my story too, is we found something that was helpful. It was not from our culture. It was helpful. And most of the people that I know that have learned acupuncture have brought respect to their teachers and respect to something that didn't come from Western culture. Now, maybe in the conglomerate we haven't, but on the individual level, I don't know anyone who's been like, you know what, I'm going to go steal this acupuncture technology because it's going to make me rich. I don't know anyone who did that. I know people that have built publishing houses because they were interested. They were curious. They did translation. I knew other people that built publishing houses. They were socialists, for God's sakes. And I've met people who built herb companies, not because they're going to make a killing, but because they couldn't find the herbs that they wanted or needed. They were worried about adulterants. And so it's like, I got my own itch to scratch, and they went and did that. And they helped to build a profession. as a result. I don't think they were attempting to co-opt or steal anything, but maybe I'm missing something here.
Yeah, so this is where I talk about this is all leading into my whole arguments of deregulation. Because one thing that I don't have a problem with, I don't have a problem with white people practicing acupuncture. I don't have a problem with that. I have problems with regulations that disenfranchise and marginalize other groups of people. And I think that's the main issue. Like, I have no problems at all, like what traditions are carrying on or respecting their teacher. That's great. My big thing is like how Chinese medicine came here from like the latter part of the 19th century to like all the way to now. It's been a sharing process. But once you regulate it, it's no longer a sharing process. You have to have all these processes that are in place, all these mechanisms of power. If you practice it like without the context of these regulations, let's say you're in Pennsylvania or you're licensed in Pennsylvania, you practice in California, you could be practicing without a license. This is what I'm trying to get at. It's this adjacency and the utilization of power. And this is where I'm saying, like, I have to stress over and over again, I have no problems with white practitioners at all. My problem is the professionalization of it. And by professionalization is using the state mechanism, state power to like, and then also to like utilize state power to bring others into jail, which was historically and current context as well, right? That's what I do not agree with. That's what I find is wrong, you know, and that is what my whole issue is. I have no problem at all with like people carrying on the traditions, people carrying canonical, neo-canonical, or whatever like label you want to put it, right? I don't have a problem with that.
Neo-canonical, that's funny.
Yeah, like I want people to share this medicine, but it can't be shared when it's regulated. And that's the issue that I have. And this is why I'm trying to bring in all these aspects of mechanisms of safety and what the rawness of it is because if you deconstruct what this medicine is, just on a basic legalese of it, you're just literally sticking a needle for therapeutic in a therapeutic intervention. Now, it can be argued that a tattoo artist does the same thing. You know what I mean? That they give tattoos to someone, and not only does it make the person feel good, they feel that they have a piece of some whatever fill in the blank to make them feel better, right?
They just put the story of their life on their skin.
Yes. And this is what I'm trying to get at is that, and if you and I, we're both seeing that like the dissolution of the acupuncture profession with the closures of schools. And I don't know about you, but my biggest fear is that medical doctors are just going to sweep in and have ownership of the acupuncture needle.
I don't think medical doctors care, by and large.
It's debatable. I don't know either. It's a black box.
But I do think that other allied professions, and yeah, let's say conventional medicine. I think doctors are too busy with other stuff. But like nurse practitioners or chiropractors, like here in the state of Missouri with 100 hours of training, chiropractors can call themselves acupuncturists and do acupuncture. And Missouri's not alone in that. And of course, we need to get into the dry needling because we all already know about that. There's that. But here's one of the things I find, oh God, I'm going to sound like a heretic, okay? I hear a lot of people being concerned about people doing dry needling. It's like, well, it's not safe and we have more training, so we should be the ones to do it. But holy smokes, man, if that cat down the street with like a month of training is getting better results than you are with a doctorate in 5 years.
100%, man.
Like, you got to game up somehow.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily dry needling, but like holding ourselves up because we got more training. Here's what I love about being a businessman. This is what I love about capitalism in the marketplace. The marketplace will let you know if you got something or you don't. Right? If you're able to help people, you'll have patients, regardless of your training.
Yeah. I mean, like, for me, like, I work at so many, like, free clinics, so the market's not really associated to that per se, but, like, I see that.
Right, but I do work, for money.
Sure.
And most of us do. And that's the way it works.
And Michael, this is where you and I agree. This is where we like very firmly agree. I've seen so many chiropractors and physical therapists help people out.
Totally.
What's wrong with that? You know what I mean? And this is what I'm saying. And my big thing right now, there's opioid epidemic. The people who are on the front lines are like harm reduction specialists, you know. Why can't they have access to NADA? What's limiting them? You think an acupuncturist like who's like have a regular practice is going to spend their time out of their day to like help those people out? But I can tell you who will. Those specialists who are dealing with like harm reduction, they are. They're going to be in the front lines. I want to teach them how to like treat like people with substance addictions and dependencies. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Tyler, I've got a buddy, good friend. He's a psychotherapist. I would love to be able to teach him how to put a few needles in an ear so that when someone's really in the teeth of working something through with him, he could just like help settle the shin just a little. Just bring a little, connect the heart and the kidney, bring the liver in. Okay, let's continue the work. It would be, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
You know what else? Listen to me, I'm a heretic now. God, hope I don't get canceled.
I like your heresy. I like your heresy so far, Michael.
I would love to see nurse practitioners know enough about acupuncture so that they don't have to prescribe omeprazole.
Sure.
Like, how about we do a few needles here for your indigestion instead of give you this drug? Aren't we all wanting people to take less drugs?
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
So I keep asking myself this question. Does acupuncture belong to me, or do I belong to acupuncture? Which is a little bit of an uncomfortable question. And I want to see our profession, air quotes profession, whatever that means. I want to see practitioners thrive. I think that's what it is. It's not that I want to see the profession thrive. I want to see practitioners thrive. And, you know, in the past, that's been through having licensure. Because look, acupuncture is weird. And for most Americans, somebody having a license to prove that they might know something about it, it's kind of needed to get them in the door for many, many people. So I understand, I'm going to call it the marketing value of a license, maybe even a doctorate. Because, you know, well, okay, doctor. Well, they're a doctor, they must know. So, I mean, so there's that. But on the other hand, I don't know. I think as a kid, I really wanted to be like an electrician or a plumber, except my parents wouldn't allow it. I've always liked the trades. I have. I think there's a lot of honor in the trades, right? Because DIY, you know, it's like it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and in a way, you're doing plumbing and electrician as an acupuncturist, like just to people's bodies. You know what I mean?
Totally. Cheap plumber. Yeah.
And this is what I'm finding. I think you're coming through. I don't know. I don't know what your thought process is, but it seems like you're kind of going through this cathartic experience of like understanding that acupuncture is bigger than us. And for me, like I don't know why other people who are on the front lines, who are constantly like seeing like really traumatic things and have the capacity to help them, why can't they just like be taught to do it? And this is the thing, what that to me is integrative medicine. You know what I mean? Like that to me is like how we like really prove this medicine to be legit, you know, instead of having these turf wars and saying like, oh yeah, it's only people with LAC or like DAOM or whatever acronym after your name are the ones privy to this. I find that to be like a huge barrier in actually helping people, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're helping people, you know?
Tyler, how much of it do you think is what I'm going to call evolutionary? That at a certain period of time, things need to look and work a certain way because that's what the times and the culture are calling for. And then things change as time goes on. They always do. And then maybe the air quotes here again, profession needs to change or morph to meet the new challenges of the times. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at, that everybody sees, schools are on the downslide, and acupuncture is on the uptick. Again, it was It was a conversation that I had with the president of Yosan. He was saying, acupuncture is doing great. In the United States, acupuncture is doing great. It's acupuncturists that aren't doing so well. And I think maybe you and I are looking, maybe through different lenses, at this phenomena of acupuncture is a rising star and different people want to use it. And there's many different ways to use it and all kinds of ways and contexts that it could be used in that we didn't even imagine 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, like, one of the things in medical anthropology is we look at like the different structures of how medicine's practiced. And for us in our like quote unquote ontology is that insurance is like the basis of most things for medical related stuff. And what you start to see is this like impetus as I see it in Pittsburgh of more insurance covering acupuncture, and that entails gets reimbursement for the practitioner, but also gives it more accessibility to people who wouldn't usually look at it that way. But of course, there's always like constraints because sometimes some acupuncture insurance coverage is only for X amount of treatments. But the point being is that like I think one of the big like powerhouses of the medical system in America is if insurance are cool fit, that becomes like the impetus for it to be accepted culturally. And it's sad, it's really sad, but it gives, in a way, it kind of like when I see like the three main insurance companies accepting acupuncture in Pittsburgh shows me that culturally speaking, the medical culture of things, that there is a big evolutionary change to it. I would argue also that acupuncture, the medicine and the profession has always been morphing. There's just different actors that are in place and different structures of power that are pushing the impetus of the medicine or tradition. I think the best way to me to describe, I write this in a monograph that I've been working on for like forever now, but like I describe it as like acupuncture is like a blob or like slime. Like, kids, they have slime or a blob and stuff like that. And then what's unique about,
I think all kids go through it. Isn't it like around the 8th grade, everyone's into slime?
yeah. Well, I would say that younger. My son was like 3 when he was all obsessed with slime and stuff.
All right. Well, he's like you. He's slightly advanced. He's going to be
He might be
he's going to be doing the next version of punk rock at age 8.
He already is. He's already been at so many punk rock shows at like 6, but like yeah. But yeah, anyways, my point is that slime is interesting because when you drop it, it adheres to everything that it touches. Whereas like the movie The Blob, right? And you can't get it out. It's embedded into it. And that to me is like the medicine. Now the profession is if that blob or slime was hardened or dried out or even oven baked, right? That the original form is no longer really there, but it's structured in a specific way that sometimes it might be fragile where things break off of it, but it's rigid. It no longer could adhere to specific things, and it's really hard to put other things to it. But when it's slime, it adopts to the language, it adopts to like the cultural mores, it adopts to like other adjacent practices to it, you know what I mean? And it just gets into it. And you can't get it out because that's why I call it American Chinese medicine. Because one of my advisors, Vivian Lowe, was like, well, don't you think what is authentic Chinese medicine? You didn't get into that. I'm like, well, that's the thing. I think it is authentically practicing Chinese medicine, but like authentically American, like practicing it. And then I talked to my mentor, Anne-Marie Moll, who's a great medical anthropologist, and she says, break it down even more. Not only say like you're an acupuncturist living in Erie, Pennsylvania. You're an acupuncturist practicing it from like the west side of Erie, Pennsylvania, to that specificity. And that to me is like where the medicine all comes in because it attaches and adheres to everything. And that's what makes it so unique, right?
Oh,
It's this diversity of like ideas, diversity of languages, diversity of like practices. That to me is the heart of it, and you can't standardize it as much as you try.
I had a teacher when I was in school, and I went to an unusual school because they taught us the usual TCM so we could pass the test. But we had Japanese, we had this, we had a whole smattering of different things. And one of my teachers said, This always stuck with me. He said, the enemy is not these other acupuncture traditions. The enemy is not Western medicine. The enemy is standardization.
Mm-hmm.
I've never forgotten that.
Yeah.
I think it bespeaks something of, and I'm going to call it Chinese medicine because it has its roots there, even though it's gone all over the dang world. Korea, Japan, Brazil, United States, St. Louis County, St. Louis, Kirkwood, right?
Yeah.
Or Menghe, right? Like Volker Scheid's great book on the Menghe clan.
Great. Yeah.
You
totally.
know, this particular place in the politics among people and the social economy and political economy of the, you know, and these great doctors. It's just, it's so, it tells you something of the vitality and the blobby character.
Yeah.
That this medicine is. I really appreciate, Tyler, your metaphor of it being a blob, slimy and moist and gooey. It adheres to everything. But if it hardens out and dries out, now it gets brittle. And maybe that's actually where we are right now.
Yeah.
So with your medical anthropologist, acupuncturist, punk rock, son of Vietnamese immigrants perspective, everything that you bring to this, the unique perspective you have, what's the opportunity that we're looking at? That at the moment it looks like disaster because it's hard to tell if things are falling apart or falling together. But what's the opportunity that we might be looking at right now as it seems things are falling apart?
Yeah, I think opportunity is already out there. I think it's working with other healthcare professionals, not have these turf wars. Start working as an actual integrative medicine. Share, each one teach one. Share the medicine. Share the operations that are in place where we can work together in mutual aid contexts to really help big up each other in the main aspect of what we do as medicine, which is to help people, and not just human people, but non-human people, all sentient beings, right? I come from the Buddhist tradition, so everything, even cats, dogs, cows, and there shouldn't be a barrier for doing that. And I think we have to have accountability. I agree on that. One law scholar from Ontario or Canada, Nadine Ijaz, and I have been discussing this for years, that maybe just a registry system. So if there is a process of accountability, that there's mechanisms in place for it. In England, where I lived for 5 years, there's no licensing for acupuncturists, and they're doing pretty good. In fact, they're doing better than Americans because they have all these clinical trials. You don't need a principal investigator to be an acupuncturist. They can just pick up a needle and needle the participants, the informants. And that's efficacious. Not only is it efficacious, but it's efficient. So if we were to deregulate and have more, and deregulation is not as hard as people think. Literally just comes with the reclassification of the acupuncture needle by the FDA. That's literally it. And that would change a lot of things. But I'm just an anthropologist. I'm just an acupuncturist. I'm a single dad. Well, I have my partner Gabrielle helping me every step of the way now. But I was a single dad for a while, and it's really hard. It's really hard for you. Say you're a businessman. I'm in the stages of late. For me, it's late stage capitalism. Things are like shutting down everywhere I see it, and we're all just trying to live around here in Pittsburgh. I think one thing that no matter what is be taken away from us, what people can't take away or mechanisms can't take away is compassion, helping each other out, having a strong network of people to support you, no matter that manifests as, whether if it's going to church or the Magic the Gathering crew or the D&D crew you go to. You know what I mean? D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, but whatever manifestation, going to metal shows, hang out with your homies, that to me is just and being there for each other, whatever that manifests as, that to me is mutual aid. That's how we get through these processes, and I think that's where the medicine really shines.
I think it really does too. I mean, I am so grateful I have the opportunity to meet the fascinating people that I meet in my work life, do the work that I do, help them through whatever is going on.
Totally.
It's extraordinarily strange medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, the longer I practice it, the weirder it gets.
Yeah.
And it gives me a sense of being connected to a community. I'm deeply grateful for that. And it allows me to make a living.
Yeah.
So that's all wonderful. Now, I want to ask you about this term because, again, man, look, I'm sorry. I'm in my late 60s. I'm a boomer. I live in the Midwest. I'm like so out of touch with so many things. There's a term you just used, and I hear it a lot, but I don't understand it. So help me. Late stage capitalism.
Yeah.
I hear it all the time, and I hear it as a slur.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about that because, look, I've spent a lot of my life like off the man and screw authority and money's the root of all evil. But, oh my God, what I see capitalism as a system that allows me to have a living where I can do what I want and reap enough that I can support myself and my family and help other people. I mean, I met people when I was in China that practiced acupuncture. They would never get acupuncture because they weren't interested in acupuncture. They were acupuncturists because that's what they were told to do and that was their job and that was that. So thank God I don't live under that.
Yeah.
I'm grateful I could choose what I've chosen. So, I don't know if I'm a raging... maybe I'm just a little bit of a fan of capitalism these days. So help me understand late stage capitalism because it seems to be in a system that lets you make some choices about what you do and be part of a community.
Yeah, well, so this is my big critique of it is that all around me, I'm in the tech capital, like literally where they make killer robots right across the street under the bridge in Pittsburgh, right over here, and I'm seeing like disproportional wealth inequality, concentrations of wealth to a specific group of people. Not only that, where we're basically trying to work multiple jobs just to make a living, the insustainability of this current capitalist system that is built on the exploitation of the working class. I mean, it's been like that, but it's gone to to the point where wealth inequality is so disproportionate, right? Like, let's just, for example, say that like $100,000 is a grain of rice, and like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos has enough. Their earnings are as much as a whole damn 50-pound bag of rice. You know what I mean? With 100,000 being 1 grain of rice. That to me is where there's so disproportionate of wealth accumulation that not only is there's like a disparity, but where I see a lot of my friends and family working so hard, multiple jobs, because jobs aren't sustainable anymore. You don't have like a job you work 30 years anymore, you know? I mean, bless you if you do.
I haven't had that either.
Yeah. And that like my dad has like that era which is showing the stage, the late stage of capitalism, and it's going into now, what do we have in common as Americans? Debt, right? We have so much debt that now it just takes literally a shifting of the power structures of how people collect debt. Will go into the stage of no longer capitalism, but like literally a feudalistic society. So that's what I mean by late stage capitalism, where we, like me, my friends, are working and like literally toiling multiple jobs. From January to June, I literally had 4 jobs just to pay rent. Like for me, it's real. For my friends, it's real. For the tech bros across the street, definitely not real. You know, they can invest in crypto and all that stuff. I had in my own, like, I'm literally in my, what I turned into a clinic, but it was my coffee shop. And like, they'd always come in, talk to me about investing in crypto, et cetera, et cetera. And like, I don't have that capacity. I don't have that extra savings. I'm literally just trying to survive.
Yeah, I don't even understand what that is. I don't even understand what crypto is.
What? Yeah, yeah.
I don't get it. It's like you want me to invest in an idea?
Yeah.
Like,
Another fungible currency that's not like it's
and wait, you want me to invest what? Oh, dollars. You want me to invest dollars. Dollars, I understand.
so Marx's like theory is that within the context of capitalism that we are at a stage now where capitalism and the free market has benefit a few, but where the rest, the working class, the poor, are literally struggling just to make it by.
It seems I've always known people that were struggling.
Yeah, but I would say at this level, at this current era that we're living in, that it's common for people to work multiple jobs. And not only to work multiple jobs, but I've I've read somewhere, where do you think how much you need to make in order to be middle class a year?
Oh boy, I don't know. I actually don't know. I would guess maybe what you're talking about, a family or a single person?
Single person.
Single person, you probably have to make 60K to be middle class.
Okay, I forgot where this came from. I don't know if it wasn't BOS. It was like 127,000.
Really?
Yeah,
To be middle class.
to be considered middle class.
Wow. Damn. I thought I had climbed out a lower middle class of my youth, but apparently I haven't.
And so when I talk about late stage capitalism, I also mean the fact that the minimum wage in America literally hasn't changed in over 20 years, right? Prices have inflated for gas. If you just think about 20 years ago, how much gas was, right? And how much cars were, how much everything was, that has gone up.
Well, and how much people make too. That's also gone up.
Very.
People make a lot more money.
I mean, if you're talking about working class people, they'll definitely disagree with you on that. Because the minimum wage.
Are you talking about skilled working class or unskilled working class?
What's the difference? I mean, look.
Big difference. Big difference.
No. I'm really asking, like, when it comes to skilled labor, that to me is like a very pernicious kind of designation, because it takes skill to do a lot of different things. And like this is literally like first chapter of Capital, Marx's Capital, exchange value, right? How much is capital worth something? How is that determined, right?
Well, how much is your labor? What is the skill that you offer? What is it worth?
Yeah, so that becomes a pernicious question, because are you going to say that the labor that Jeff Bezos makes is what, 300 million times than the average person, or 100 million times the average person? You're going to disagree with that. And this is where the accumulation of capital and who determines surplus, like who determines exchange value, what determines it, becomes very arbitrary. It's like literally so I do this experiment with my students. It's called the Santa Claus experiment, right?
The Santa Claus experiment. Okay.
Yeah. So I asked my class, how many of y'all believe in Santa Claus? Of course, very few. The people who raise their hands are usually trying to be jokesters and stuff. And I asked them, what color does Santa Claus wear? And they're usually like red, and then they're like, okay, he wears red and white. Okay. And I ask, Santa Claus, is he svelte or is he jolly? They're like, he's like jolly Saint Nick. I'm like, okay. What does he ride? Does he ride on anything? They're like, yeah, he rides on a sleigh. And I'm like, is it motorized? They're like, no, it's not motorized. Reindeer push it. Oh, reindeer. And where does he live? He lives in the North Pole. Okay. Does he have any helpers? And then they're like, yeah, elves. Elves help him. Okay. And what does he give to people? They're like, presents. I'm like, okay. Is there any rituals that you gotta do for him? And they said, oh yeah, sometimes people leave like their stockings up and give him milk and cookies. And I'm like, okay. So, and effigies of him. Are you allowed to put effigies of Santa Claus in July? Everyone's like, no. How about like September? No, Costco does it, but like typically no. You know what I mean? And I said, okay. So what we learned, he doesn't exist, right? And what is the big lie? What is the big lie that you have to say? You have to tell.
That you got a whole story about him?
Well, the big lie about Santa Claus is that you have to tell children that he exists, right? That's the big lie, right?
If you're Christian.
So, yeah. So you have all these rituals. You know what he looks like. You know what he wears. That he has helpers. That what he like flies or rides. What kind of effigies, when to put him up, when not to put him up. What he puts under the tree or what he gives people. But you're going to all tell me that he doesn't exist. And then I pull out $100 bill and I'm like, but y'all believe this is real.
Well, yeah, okay. So there's this idea in physics that you can never really touch something else, right? Like you take any distance between two things and you have it and you have it. You can't really actually touch something else theoretically, but you can certainly get close enough to kiss a girl.
Okay, or guy. But I'm just saying this. I'm just going to say this. I'm going to give you another analogy. It might be a little bit more real, okay? My mom and dad, on April 28th, 1975, they were about to close on a house in Saigon. I think it was like District 9 in Saigon, right? They had a whole bunch of cash with them, a whole bunch of Vietnamese cash, right? My mom dressed up all nice. Then she got word from my dad that she has to go meet my dad in the middle of the Foucault race track, right? All that cash. My mom's thinking, okay, this is kind of weird, but why do I need to meet my husband? My dad's like, just meet me in the middle of the race horse track. Just do it. My dad gets a helicopter, pick her up, right? He picks her up. Then they go into the Gulf of Tonkin, and then they land in the USS Hancock in the 7th Fleet, right? Automatically, the American naval officer or naval personnel pushes my dad's helicopter into the ocean, right? My dad starts to hear on the radio that everyone has abandoned their positions, that everyone's going AWOL, right? So, all that money they carried with them, worthless.
Worthless, yes.
And this is what I'm talking about, exchange value. That's a more like real representation of it.
Yes. Okay, good. We're getting to something. I really appreciate this, by the way, because this is really something I've been thinking about. Exchange value. Yeah, I agree. Money's a representation, right? It has a kind of meaning that we all give it. But like, what is it that we're exchanging beyond whatever economic system we're using? My suspicion is we're exchanging value of some sort. We're looking to exchange value. As I look at nature, nature appears to work through exchange of value, right? Trees pull in carbon dioxide, they release oxygen. We appreciate that oxygen, we bring it in, we exchange carbon dioxide. All nature works on exchange of value. I get it that there's ways to game systems, and whether you're gaming a capitalist system or a communist system, there are going to be people that are greedy, because that's a human issue, that are going to game whatever system. They're going to get some extra. But for us Lao Baixing, us regular folk, it appears to me that we're working on exchanging value of some sort. And isn't that also partly how we build community? Some kind of exchange of value between each other to help each other, to strengthen our ties, to strengthen our community, to have meaning, to be able to help people, because we actually need each other in a big way.
And this is where I would say, or some people would say, those kind of communities are priceless. Those kind of exchanges and relationships are priceless. And that's where it's like really, really difficult to like not only commodify something, but to place an exchange value on something. And this is where Marx gets into the abstraction of capital in chapter 1, right? Like it's based on like the conditions of like labor productions, but as we're learning that capital is becoming even more abstract. Like the whole big thing with NFTs, they're not anything anymore. But I remember people buying NFTs for like non-fungible tokens for like literally $3 million.
Yes, I think that's called a scam.
Sure. But then have that same mentality and look at capitalism. People.
But I don't think it's a scam. You just mentioned the word commodification. And yeah, certain things are commodities, like washing machines, thank God. The commodities, cell phones, commodities, great. Mass produce them, they're super useful. Everybody's got them, they work, right? Standards and all that. Here's one of the things I love about Chinese medicine. It's not a commodity. I mean, maybe if you just work in protocols in a hospital, it is. For an insurance code, maybe it's a commodity. But the way I practice, I suspect the way you practice, the way I suspect many people listening to this practice, it's handmade medicine. I made this. I'm making it. It's not that I made this. I'm making this. I'm making it for you based on who you are, what your pulse feels like, what your tongue looks like. Because you're so dang damp, I'm going to do this treatment and help dry you out, right? Because you're so yin deficient and dry and your blobbiness needs some, some slime to it, I'm going to moisten that tie-in, right? I love doing the work because I think it is it's skilled hand labor, which has always been a love of mine. It's not a commodity and it has value. And anyway, we could probably go on, and we should probably take it offline because people, we're getting a little bit in the weeds with it. But I appreciate your thoughts about this, and I hear the suffering. I watch my daughter and kids her age in their early 20s. It's a different world than one I grew up in, but it's always some kind of different world.
Yeah, it's the first noble truth, man. All things are suffering.
Yep.
It's just different flavors of suffering.
Different flavors of suffering. Well, we all got something to share, don't we?
Yeah.
Anyway, Tyler, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your perspective. Thank you for helping me understand the ways that you think about safety, and it's just helping me to look at the profession a little bit differently. I can see the different sides. I've talked to a lot of different people. I get it, the people that want to be a part of the system as it is, and so we have to bring on the education and trappings of what that is. But I also, one of the beautiful things about Chinese medicine is it's very malleable. There's a lot of different ways that we get to do this. And
the blob, man.
The blob. I appreciate it. I never thought about Chinese medicine as the blob, but I kind of dig it.
I'm very appreciative and very thankful and grateful for you having me on. And reading my dissertation, it means a lot to me. I really put a lot out there, so to really kind of get people aware of the underbelly, also the bright side of things in acupuncture and Chinese medicine in the United States.
Yeah. I appreciate your perspective. I appreciate your work. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much.
And we'll have to catch up again.
Will do.
All right. Tyler?
Thank you so much, Michael.
Take care.
Take care.
Well, that wraps it up for today's conversation with Tyler. I'm struck by how his punk rock roots echo through his view of medicine. The DIY spirit, the refusal to accept authority without question, and the drive to build something new from the edges. Through Foucault's lens of power, Tyler suggests that American Chinese medicine didn't just cross an ocean, it was reconstructed here. What began as cultural curiosity became a professionalized system shaped by state power, licensing, and the politics of legitimacy. And while those structures gave the medicine a seat at the table, they also displaced the very Asian communities that carried it over here. He reminds us that regulation, for all its talk of safety, often reflects who gets to define what safety means. That's the thing with power. It both protects and excludes. Tyler's work is a perspective that I'd not previously considered. I didn't study Foucault in my formal schooling, nor do I view the world primarily through the dynamics of power. So his perspective, it's a bit new to me. Perhaps having lived abroad and seeing how other cultures mix American influence into their lives, maybe because I see relationship not just in terms of who you have power over, but also who you help and how cooperation and the blending of differences is often the wellspring of creativity. So again, considering the dynamics of power, it gives me a pause. And makes me wonder, too, at how our profession is influenced towards, air quotes here, integration with conventional biomedicine, and how those power dynamics might strip away acupuncture from us. History unfolds into the future. One thing for sure, acupuncture has gained a firm footing here in the USA and other parts of the West. But the question of who gets to practice it, that remains an ongoing question. You've made it all the way through this episode. I suspect there's something in this conversation that held your attention, maybe gave you some unexpected insight or reminded you of something that you know well and appreciate. Why not seize the moment now and share this podcast with a friend? They'll be glad to know that you're thinking about them. Geological is a team effort. Ruth Asparis and Ann Manalo are our editors. Neil Matthews is the WordPress dude who tames the tech. Lauren Delfonzio keeps us all organized, and Sharon Sherman, who brings her eye for detail and reliably asks the troublesomely helpful questions. If you love the podcast and would like to contribute financially to help keep the microphones hot and the servers juiced up, become a member. There's some benefits too. Details are on the website.